Why more men are quietly walking away from dating. According to a 2023 study by the Pew Research Center, 57% of single adults in the United States say they are not looking for a relationship or even casual dating. That's not a typo. More than half of all single people, the majority being men, have chosen to step back entirely from the world of romance. And no one seems to be talking about it. Imagine a party once filled with laughter, conversation, and anticipation. Slowly, the music fades, the chairs begin to empty, and without any announcement, the men begin to leave, one by one. Not with bitterness, not with drama, just quiet footsteps walking away from something that no longer feels worth attending. This isn't just about dating apps or bad first dates. This is about something deeper. A cultural shift, a silent rebellion, an exhaustion that's hard to articulate but impossible to ignore. We live in a time where relationships are more visible than ever but somehow less satisfying. Where connections are more instant but feel less intimate. Where the pursuit of love has become a game many no longer want to play. So why are men choosing to opt out of dating altogether? Is it fear, fatigue, or something even more profound? And what does this say about the modern world we've built around intimacy, connection, and value in this video? We will explore the hidden reasons why more and more men are stepping away from romance, and what they might be walking toward instead. When expectations become an invisible wall. Psychology today points out something subtle but powerful. Most people believe they know exactly what they want in a partner. But research shows that these carefully crafted lists of preferences often collapse the moment real human connection enters the room. What someone thinks they want and what actually works in real life often do not align. This disconnect is rarely acknowledged, yet it shapes countless failed interactions. For many modern women, the list is long. Confidence, emotional intelligence, financial stability, humor, height, ambition, sensitivity, dominance, open-mindedness, masculinity, gentleness, and somehow, he must have it all without ever trying too hard. The problem isn't the desire for quality. It's the belief that perfection should arrive naturally, effortlessly, and without compromise. Now imagine being on the other side of that. Imagine being the man who feels like he's auditioning for a role he never even signed up for. The man who sees that no matter how kind, how honest, how hardworking he is, he never quite measures up to an ideal that keeps shifting further out of reach. It's like trying to scale a wall that doesn't just grow taller, it changes shape with every step. These expectations, once meant to inspire compatibility, have become barriers. Invisible, but heavy. And over time, they wear men down. Not all men, not all women, but enough to shift the tone of an entire generation's experience with dating. So when the wall becomes too high, too abstract, too exhausting, many men don't try harder. They simply stop trying. Not out of weakness, out of clarity. Out of the quiet realization that maybe the rules of the game are no longer worth playing. And if they're not climbing that wall anymore, the question becomes, where are they choosing to stand instead? Why men are afraid to make the first move. In today's social climate, approaching someone isn't just about confidence anymore. For many men, it's about risk management. Every glance, every word, every gesture carries the weight of possible misinterpretation. What once might have been a moment of innocent flirtation is now a potential headline. What once sparked connection now triggers anxiety. Many men describe the experience of dating as walking through a minefield with no map. The rules aren't clear. The boundaries shift. What's acceptable today might be offensive tomorrow. It's not that they fear women, it's that they fear the consequences of doing or saying the wrong thing, even with the best intentions. So they retreat. They lower their gaze. They keep conversations surface level. Not because they don't care, but because they're tired of being made to feel like predators for simply expressing interest. And slowly, the approach becomes the threat, not the bridge. This is not about blaming anyone. It's about naming a reality. A growing number of men have internalized a message that their desire, when expressed, is dangerous. So they stay silent. They stay passive. They avoid situations where they might be misread, avoid touching, avoid speaking, avoid stepping forward, not because of rejection, but because of the fallout that might follow. The message becomes clear. It's safer to say nothing. It's easier to feel nothing. It's better to not begin than to risk misunderstanding. But there's a cost to this silence. When interaction itself feels unsafe, connection becomes impossible. And when connection fades, something more vital begins to slip away: the ability to feel, to trust, to open. So what happens next when men stop reaching out, not because they've given up on love, but because they no longer trust the process of being seen? Ghosting, games, and the feeling of being used. In a recent study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, researchers found that 20% of participants had experienced ghosting and 30% had been breadcrumbed in just the past year. These aren't rare, isolated events. They are becoming the new norm in modern dating culture. Ghosting when someone vanishes without a word. Breadcrumbing when someone gives just enough attention to keep you interested, but never enough to move forward. On the surface, these behaviors seem like small acts, but the impact runs deep. For the person on the receiving end, it creates a sense of instability, confusion, and emotional imbalance. You start questioning your worth, your instincts, your judgment. It's not just about rejection. It's about the slow erosion of trust. When someone disappears mid-conversation or keeps you dangling with vague promises, it's not just disappointing, it's disorienting. It creates an environment where authenticity feels like a liability and vulnerability becomes a trap. For many men, these patterns lead to one conclusion. If sincerity is met with silence, and effort is met with manipulation, then maybe it's safer not to feel at all. Dating begins to resemble a game. Not the kind you play for fun, but one rigged against those who still believe in honesty. In that game, the person who cares the least holds the most power. The one who shows up, who expresses, who hopes, they're the ones who lose. And over time, losing doesn't just sting. It numbs. It teaches you not to try. It makes you forget what connection is supposed to feel like. So when genuine intention is repeatedly met with strategic silence, when games replace conversations, and people become disposable, something changes. You stop participating. Not out of bitterness, but because it starts to feel like a contest no one actually wins. And when the emotional cost keeps rising, the next question isn't about how to win. It's about whether the entire game is worth the price. Dating has never been this expensive. According to data from Self-Financial and Global Dating Insights in 2024, 69% of adults say they feel financially stressed about dating. The average cost for just one date sits at $67.87 over a lifetime. One poll in Lennox Advisors estimate that the total cost of dating for the average person can exceed $100,000 to $21,000. And that's not including the emotional price. These aren't just numbers. They reflect a growing anxiety, one where love comes with a receipt. A dinner here, an app subscription there, a weekend getaway to keep the spark alive. What was once a matter of chemistry now feels like a transaction. Swipe, match, spend, repeat. For many men, the pressure to perform financially isn't just expected, it's assumed. If you don't pay for the first date, it signals a lack of seriousness. If you do, it opens the door to a second. The cost becomes the gateway to possibility. But what happens when the cost outweighs the connection? When dates become obligations and gifts become expectations? Something vital begins to erode. Intimacy starts to feel like a product. Attention becomes currency. Romance is judged by price tags instead of presence. And men are left wondering if what they're investing will ever truly be returned. The value of a relationship used to be measured in emotional growth, shared memories, mutual respect. Now it's measured in monthly budgets. The pressure builds quietly. And for some, it becomes the silent reason why they step away. Not because they don't want to invest, but because they no longer trust what they're investing in. The metaphor is painful but accurate. Love today often feels like it's been packaged and sold, measured by steak dinners, ride shares, and matching outfits for Instagram. The deeper questions, am I seen, am I understood, am I appreciated, get buried beneath the noise of expectation. But as overwhelming as these financial pressures are, the most devastating cost isn't listed on any bank statement. It's something else, something heavier, something that no amount of money can repair. Behind the exhaustion is the feeling of being left behind. In 2023, Gallup released a report revealing that men in the United States are experiencing record levels of loneliness and emotional isolation. It's not just a passing phase. It's a long, steady drift away from the warmth of connection, one that's been building quietly for years. For many men, the emotional fatigue of dating isn't about rejection or incompatibility. It's about invisibility. When a man shows up honestly, shares himself, puts in the effort, and still ends up alone, he doesn't just feel unwanted. He feels unseen. And when this happens enough times, something inside starts to shut down. Not dramatically, not angrily, but silently. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, until the desire to connect fades into the background like an echo that's no longer answered. Harvard Business Review has touched on a growing psychological trend. Many men are experiencing a loss of identity in the modern relationship landscape. They no longer know who they are supposed to be. The old roles, provider, protector, initiator, have been questioned, redefined, or dismissed. But what replaces them is often unclear. The result is a quiet identity crisis, a feeling of standing on shifting ground with no direction. And in the age of constant comparison, this crisis becomes even more painful. On social media, everyone seems connected, fulfilled, loved. The highlight reels are endless. The images of perfect couples, extravagant dates, and smiling partners blur into one ongoing message: if you're alone, you're falling behind. This perception creates a toxic loop. Loneliness breeds doubt. Doubt breeds withdrawal. Withdrawal reinforces the loneliness. The pressure to keep up isn't just financial, It's emotional. It tells men they need to be more romantic, more attentive, more successful, more expressive, but only in the right way, at the right time, in the right tone. Any misstep can be met with criticism, confusion, or silence. Over time, the cost of trying begins to outweigh the hope of connection. It's here, in this emotional landscape, that many men reach a breaking point. But it's not the dramatic collapse pop culture expects. It's the quiet choice to step back, to stop chasing, to stop performing, to stop placing their worth in the hands of others who may not be ready to receive it. And surprisingly, some men find peace there. Not because they hate women, not because they fear love, but because for the first time in a long time, they feel free from the need to constantly prove themselves. They redirect their energy inward into their careers, their health, their hobbies, their friendships. They build a life that doesn't depend on being chosen, and that decision can be powerful. It can bring clarity, confidence, self-respect. For some, walking away from dating is not an act of defeat, but an act of reclamation. A refusal to participate in a system that leaves them feeling diminished. But of course, not everyone who steps away is trying to escape. Some are simply trying to pause, to reset, to find a way of relating that feels safer, truer, more balanced. Because deep down, the need for connection never disappears. It just gets quieter. It hides beneath the surface, waiting for something more genuine to return. Men are not turning cold. They're turning inward. They're tired of being expected to guess what's right while being punished for getting it wrong. Tired of being labeled either too soft or too harsh, too passive or too aggressive, too available or too distant. The tightrope is exhausting, and eventually, even the strongest get tired of walking it. So when a man chooses to step back, it's not always because he's done with love. Sometimes it's because he's finally learned to love himself enough to stop chasing approval. But not every man makes that same choice. Some aren't content with walking away forever. There are those who want to try again but differently, with new rules, new clarity, new strength. Men who don't want to give up on connection, but who are done with confusion, done with guessing, done with losing themselves to earn someone else's attention. They're not walking away from love. They're walking toward a different way of loving. A way that feels more honest, more grounded, more human. And for them, that journey is just beginning. If men want lasting love, what needs to change? Stepping away from modern dating doesn't always mean giving up on love. For many men, it's a pause, a chance to rethink how they engage, what they tolerate, and who they become in relationships. It's not about blaming women, culture, or even dating apps. It's about finding a more grounded way to connect, a way that doesn't burn them out or leave them feeling invisible. And that journey starts with 4 critical shifts. The first is setting boundaries that protect, not isolate. According to guidance from the American Psychological Association, healthy boundaries are the cornerstone of emotional well-being. They define where you end and someone else begins. For men, this means knowing when to say no, when to walk away, and when to pause without guilt. It means understanding that giving more doesn't always lead to receiving more. That being generous doesn't require being self-sacrificing. Boundaries aren't barriers, they are respect in action. And without them, resentment quietly grows where intimacy was meant to bloom. The second is learning how to listen, not to fix, not to debate, not to defend, but simply to understand. The Journal of Positive Psychology highlights that active listening is one of the most powerful tools in building meaningful connections. When a man truly listens, he sends a message that goes beyond words. I see you, I hear you, and you matter. But the reverse is also true. Men need to be listened to as well. They need safe spaces to express, to process, to feel without being judged. In a culture that often mocks male vulnerability, the simple act of being heard can be transformational. Listening is not passive. It is one of the most courageous acts in any relationship. The third shift is philosophical. It comes from the ancient Stoics, men who faced chaos not with rage, but with reason. Think of Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus. Their wisdom teaches that peace comes not from controlling others, but from mastering ourselves. Ryan Holiday, in The Daily Stoic, reminds us that our reactions are the only things fully within our power. For the modern man, this means stepping out of emotional reactivity and into intentional response. It means embracing discomfort without panic, criticism without collapse, and disappointment without despair. Stoicism is not coldness. It is calm in the face of pressure. And it offers a kind of inner resilience that no dating app algorithm can ever provide. Finally, there's mindful dating, a quieter, slower, more conscious approach to connection. Researchers at MIT Media Lab have explored how intentional behavior in early relationship stages can lead to more fulfilling outcomes. This approach is not about pursuing someone to fill a void or prove a point. It's about curiosity over conquest, presence over performance, It's about entering a date, not asking how can I impress her, but can we truly understand each other? Mindful dating invites both people to take off the masks, to leave behind the scripts, the checklists, the power games. It asks for patience, vulnerability, and shared responsibility. It's not glamorous. It doesn't promise sparks at every turn, but it builds something far rarer, a foundation. Imagine two people not sprinting toward love but walking slowly toward each other, seeing each step, feeling each word, trusting that if it's real, it won't need to be rushed. In this kind of dating, silence is allowed, space is welcomed, and honesty is non-negotiable. It's like getting out of a sports car that races from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds and choosing instead to walk. Not because walking is safer, but because it lets you actually see who's beside you. When men make these shifts not to manipulate, not to impress, but to stay true to themselves, something remarkable happens. They stop chasing and start attracting. They stop performing and start connecting. They stop trying to win someone's heart and begin to offer their own from a place of clarity. These changes are not easy. They require unlearning. They demand reflection. They take time. But they also offer something that quick fixes and dating hacks never can: real intimacy. Built not on illusion or urgency, but on mutual presence. And for men who are tired of being confused, tired of feeling expendable, tired of pouring energy into a process that gives little back, this path offers something different. Not a guarantee, but a chance. A real one. Because in the end, it's not about finding someone perfect. It's about creating something honest. And that begins the moment you stop looking outward for validation and start building inward with intention. So now, the question isn't whether men will continue to walk away. The real question is whether they'll choose to walk back differently, with clearer eyes, stronger boundaries, and a deeper understanding of what connection really means. And that choice is no longer up to the culture, the apps, or the expectations of others. That choice now belongs to each man who's ready to love on his own terms. Keep going. Step back, or redefine what love means. After everything we've explored, the question becomes less about what went wrong and more about what comes next. For men standing at this quiet crossroads, there are really only three paths forward. Some will choose to pause, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They'll take a break not to escape love, but to heal the wounds it left behind. They'll rebuild their sense of self. They'll focus on peace over pressure. And in that space, they may discover that solitude is not loneliness, but restoration. Others will choose to continue, but this time, not blindly. Not with the same expectations that once led to frustration. They'll walk forward with boundaries, clarity, and self-respect. They'll bring a new version of themselves to the table, one that no longer begs to be chosen but chooses wisely in return. And then there are those who will redefine the whole idea. They'll step outside the blueprint entirely. For them, fulfillment may not come from a traditional relationship. It might come from friendship, purpose, creativity, or inner peace. They don't reject love. They just no longer believe it must look one way to be real. There is no right path. Only the one that feels most honest. So now the question turns to you. If you were standing at that same crossroad between continuing stepping back or redefining, what direction would you choose?